Muramasa Katana, the cursed sword that terrified Japan's shoguns. Some legends begin with a king. Some begin with a war. But this one began with a sword. A sword known as Yoto, the so-called demonic blades. Every object has a story. Every legend hides a truth. And every chapter of history leaves behind a mystery waiting to be uncovered. Welcome to a place where history, myth, and forgotten stories come back to life. Let's begin. A samurai rests his hand on the hilt of his katana. He pauses for a moment, not because he fears the man standing before him, but because he fears the blade in his own hand. For centuries, a story has been told across Japan. They say that once a sword forged by Muramasa is drawn from its scabbard, it will not rest until it has tasted blood. And it doesn't matter whose blood it is. An enemy, a friend, or even its own master. Perhaps it's only a legend. But what if that very legend was enough to make one of the most powerful governments in Japanese history order these swords to be confiscated? What if people scraped the maker's name off the blade, yet refused to part with the sword itself? Then we're no longer dealing with just a legend. We're looking at a piece of history that has endured for more than 400 years. And the strangest part of all is that everything began with the sound of a blacksmith's hammer. A blacksmith whose name outlived even the swords he forged. In Japan, a sword was never just a weapon of war. For a samurai, losing his sword was like losing part of his identity. That is why swordsmiths were never seen as mere craftsmen. People believed that with every strike of the hammer, a piece of the smith's soul became part of the steel. Among hundreds of legendary swordsmiths, two names stood above all others: Masamune and Muramasa. Today, most historians believe the two probably never met. But legends follow their own rules.
The Trial of the River. It is said that one day, the two masters stood beside a river, not to fight, but to answer a single question. Which sword was truly superior? Muramasa was the first to lower his katana into the flowing water. The blade shimmered beneath the light. Every leaf carried by the current that touched its edge was instantly sliced clean in two. Some even claimed that if a fish happened to swim past, it wouldn't escape the blade's razor-sharp edge. Muramasa smiled proudly and said,
"Look closely, master. My sword is the very embodiment of power. Nothing survives its edge." Then Masamune placed his own sword into the river. But this time, something entirely different happened. The leaves drifted toward the blade, yet instead of being cut, they gently flowed around it. Not a single leaf was split. Not a single fish was harmed. Muramasa laughed with scorn. "What kind of sword is that? It can't even cut a leaf." At that
that moment, a monk who had witnessed the test spoke. "Your sword cuts everything, but Masamune's sword cuts only when it should. The greatness of a blade lies not in its power, but in its judgment." Perhaps this meeting never happened, but the legend had already done its work. From that day on, Muramasa's name became forever entwined with darkness. It was only a story until history began repeating it. The 16th century, Japan was consumed by civil war. It was during these turbulent years that the name Muramasa appeared again and again alongside the Tokugawa clan. Tokugawa Ieyasu's grandfather was killed by a blade from the Muramasa school. Not long afterward, his father met the same fate. Years later, his own son, Nobuyasu, was ordered by Ieyasu to commit seppuku, ritual suicide, and the sword that ended the ceremony was once again a Muramasa blade. Even Ieyasu himself was wounded several times by swords forged in the Muramasa tradition. The order that made the legend immortal. To the Tokugawa government, this was no longer just a sword. It had become a symbol of misfortune. The order was given. Muramasa swords were to be confiscated. Many owners scraped the maker's name from the blades. Others hid their swords inside walls or locked them away in hidden chests. And by banning them, the government gave them immortality. The enemies of the Tokugawa shogunate embraced Muramasa as a symbol of resistance and rebellion. The harder the government tried to erase these swords from history, the greater the legend became. But what was the truth? These blades are regarded as masterpieces of Japanese swordmaking. Steel of extraordinary quality. A razor-sharp edge combined with remarkable flexibility. And the beautiful wave-like temper line known as the hamon, still considered one of the finest signatures of traditional Japanese craftsmanship. Perhaps the mystery of Muramasa was never a mystery at all. Perhaps they were simply the finest swords of their time. And the finest swords are the ones that see the most battles. The more often a blade enters war, the more often its name echoes through history. 400 years have passed. The wars are over. The samurai are gone. Yet even today, when you hear the name Muramasa, before you think of a blacksmith, you think of a curse. And perhaps that is the greatest power any legend can ever possess.
If you enjoyed the story of Muramasa, there's so much more waiting to be discovered. History is full of incredible weapons, forgotten empires, mysterious figures, and legends that are even stranger than fiction. So if you love stories like this, hit subscribe and come along for the journey. We'll uncover the mysteries, separate myth from history, and explore the stories the world almost forgot. I'll see you in the next one.